Imagine for a second that you were sitting in the hot seat. The spotlight is just completely on you.
Oh, yeah, the absolute worst feeling.
Right. I mean, maybe it's a sleek corporate boardroom or, maybe it's just the glowing green light of your webcam.
Right.
But the intense, suffocating pressure is identical.
Totally identical.
Your technical skills are flawless. You know your craft inside and out. But the moment you have to explain those brilliant technical concepts in a non-native language, under the glaring scrutiny of an international high-pressure job interview, your mind just goes completely, utterly blank.
It's just a total wall.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how do you survive that? Well, today, our mission is to decode the hidden linguistic and cultural rules of surviving and completely dominating international high-pressure job interviews, especially in the tech world.
And we have a really deep stack of sources to work through for this deep dive today. We're looking at a breakdown of high-pressure tactical idioms, a behavioral analysis of cultural communication nuances, and an actual transcript of a coaching session.
Yeah, that transcript is fascinating.
It really is. It's between a corporate recruiter named Alex and a highly skilled but very nervous developer named Mark.
So, I mean, if our brains are chemically locking up in these situations, we can't just tell ourselves to, try harder to remember the vocabulary, right?
No, not at all. That never works.
Right. We need to start by looking at the actual physical and mental barrier that prevents genuinely talented people from succeeding. I'm talking about the sheer panic of the interview chair.
Yeah, and Mark is the classic example in our sources here. He tells his coach that he is, quote, terrified and completely freezes up when speaking about his experience in English.
Terrified. I mean, that's a really intense word for a professional setting.
It is, yeah. Terrified is a powerful choice of words there. When a candidate who's operating in a second language uses a highly emotional, vivid word like that, it signals a strong command of emotional nuance.
Oh, right. Because they aren't just saying, I'm scared.
Exactly. But more importantly, describing that freeze up points us directly to the neuroscience of what is actually happening in that boardroom.
Okay, let's unpack that. What's happening in the brain?
Well, when you are sitting across from a panel of interviewers, your body often perceives that high-stakes scrutiny as a literal physical threat.
Like a predator.
Pretty much. Your amygdala, which is the fear center of your brain, it hijacks your nervous system and just floods your body with cortisol.
So the biological response is not just, a lack of preparation or being bad at interviews.
Precisely. Under that kind of acute stress, your brain abandons high-level executive functions to conserve energy for a fight-or-flight response.
Wow, so you're literally in survival mode.
Yeah, and here is the really critical part for international candidates. Your native language is deeply automated, right? It takes very little cognitive load.
Because you've been speaking it your whole life.
Right. But speaking a second language, translating technical jargon, and, monitoring your own grammar, that requires massive engagement from your prefrontal cortex.
Okay, so that's the part of the brain that's doing the heavy lifting.
Exactly. And when the cortisol hits, the prefrontal cortex essentially goes offline. That is the physical mechanism behind the blank.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Every English word you've ever learned gets temporarily locked behind a chemical wall.
It's like having a high-performance sports car engine, right? The engine itself is a marvel of engineering, and that represents your flawless technical skill.
Oh, I like this analogy.
Right. But when you try to shift gears into a different language under pressure, the cognitive load is just too heavy, and the transmission completely slips.
Yeah, it just disconnects.
The engine is roaring, you have all the horsepower in the world, but the car isn't moving an inch.
That is a perfect visualization of the cognitive overload. I mean, the latent power is there, but the delivery mechanism is jammed.
Jammed up completely.
And this brings up a phrase that our sources highlight as being absolutely everywhere in corporate culture. The ability to work under pressure. You see it in almost every IT job description for major global brands.
Yeah, I see that phrase so often it feels like a meaningless cliche. It really does start to blend in.
And honestly, it makes me question the whole interview setup. Like, if an engineering director looks at a candidate's GitHub or their portfolio and knows they are technically brilliant, why put so much weight on this artificial performance under pressure in a sterile room?
That's a very common frustration.
Right. Aren't they basically just testing a developer's acting skills? Like, hey, can you play the role of a confident extrovert for 45 minutes?
I mean, it is easy to view it as a theatrical test. But if we connect this to the macro view of business operations, it's not about acting at all.
Okay, what is it about then?
It is about a behavioral preview. The business reality is that the interview serves as a microcosm of the actual job environment.
Meaning how you handle the interview is how you'll handle the job.
Exactly. How you handle the immense, uncomfortable pressure of the interview chair is evaluated as a direct indicator of how you will handle, say, a catastrophic server crash on Black Friday,
Oh, wow. Okay, the stakes are real.
or a high-stakes meeting with hostile stakeholders whose money is on the line. If your prefrontal cortex shuts down during a tough technical question in an interview, the assumption is that your problem-solving abilities will also shut down when the company's revenue is hemorrhaging.
That makes a lot of sense. So I'm guessing then that the tactical solution to this biological problem isn't just to, like, talk faster and push through the panic.
No, pushing through usually just makes the panic worse.
Right. If our biology is working against us, we need some sort of physical circuit breaker to stop the cortisol response.
You are looking for a way to manipulate time, which is honestly the most powerful strategy you can deploy here. You have
Yep.
to master the art of the pause.
The pause. Okay, but in the coaching transcript, Mark expresses a deep resistance to pausing.
He does, yeah. He's very against it.
He tells Alex that if he stops to think after a tough question, he's going to look entirely unprofessional. Like, he feels this desperate urge to answer immediately just to prove he belongs in the room.
And that urge is not just nerves, it is deeply rooted in cultural conditioning.
Really? How so?
Well, our sources highlight a profound divide in how different regions interpret silence. In many CIS countries, the Commonwealth of Independent States, falling silent during an oral examination or an interview is culturally perceived as an outright failure.
That's wild.
Right.
Why is that the default assumption? Is it tied to how the educational systems are structured over there?
Largely, yes. Historically, many of those educational frameworks heavily emphasized rote memorization and immediate recall.
So you're just supposed to spit the answer back out.
Exactly. If you are asked a question and you pause, the adjudicator assumes you simply did not memorize the material. Silence equals a lack of competence.
But in the US and Western Europe, the educational emphasis often leans more toward, case studies, debate, formulating original arguments.
Right, it's much more discursive.
So I imagine the perception of silence in a corporate setting there is entirely different.
It is a complete inversion. In Western corporate culture, taking a mindful, deliberate pause before tackling a complex technical question is actually viewed as a marker of high intelligence.
Really? It makes you look smarter.
Yes, because it signals to the interviewer that you are actively listening, synthesizing the variables, and engineering a tailored, strategic response.
Instead of just reciting a script.
Exactly. Immediate, rapid-fire answers often come across as memorized, textbook regurgitation, which does not inspire confidence in a crisis.
So you have to fundamentally unlearn the instinct that silence is a confession of ignorance.
You do. But sitting in dead silence for 10 seconds while staring at a webcam is going to make anyone uncomfortable no matter where you're from.
Oh yeah, that sounds excruciating. You definitely need a buffer.
Which is where the concept of buying time becomes essential. The coach, Addix, advises Mark to stop launching blindly into technical explanations and instead use introductory phrasing to give his brain a physical second to catch up.
Okay, so the prime example Alex gives Mark is to stop using the default phrase, good question.
Right, which everyone uses.
Yeah, everybody says that. And instead, Alex says to look the interviewer in the eye and say, that's a stellar question.
Yes, stellar.
I have to push back on this one, I really do.
Let's hear it.
Stellar. I mean, if I ask someone to explain an API integration and they say, that's a stellar question, I'm going to think they're being overly dramatic. It just feels highly rehearsed.
I completely understand why it feels out of place in casual conversation. But in the highly structured environment of an international interview, swapping good for stellar is actually a psychological masterstroke.
Really? Okay, walk me through the mechanics of that. How does one word change the dynamic so much?
It operates on 3 distinct levels. First, the acoustic nature of the word itself.
Acoustics.
Yeah, stellar is a slightly more complex polysyllabic word. Enunciating it requires you to subconsciously slow your breathing and your cadence.
Oh, I see. So it acts as a micro-intervention against the cortisol spike we talked about earlier.
Precisely. And second, it creates a 3-second buffer zone. While you are confidently delivering the phrase, that is a stellar question, your mouth is just on autopilot.
Giving your prefrontal cortex the critical milliseconds it needs to boot back up.
Exactly. It buys you the time to formulate the actual technical answer.
So it's essentially an auditory smokescreen. You look engaged, but you are actually rebooting your system behind the scenes.
It is a highly productive smokescreen, yes. And the third level is the interpersonal dynamic.
How does it change the dynamic?
Well, saying good question is a passive acknowledgement. Complimenting their inquiry as stellar elevates your
Oh,
status.
because you're the one judging the question now.
Exactly. You are no longer a subordinate being interrogated. You are subtly positioning yourself as a peer who is qualified to evaluate the quality of their technical thinking.
That's fascinating. You shift the power dynamic from an interrogation to a consultation between equals.
You do. It levels the playing field instantly.
Okay, so if I'm sitting in that chair, I've now successfully stopped the freeze-up. I've deployed a strategic pause using a phrase that elevates my status.
Right. You've bought yourself time.
I have their attention, and I look confident, but now, I actually have to speak and deliver an answer. I assume the goal here isn't just to dump a list of technical specs on them.
Far from it. This is where you transition from managing your anxiety to actively marketing your value.
Self-marketing.
Yes. Our sources make it abundantly clear that modesty is a severe liability in international interviews. You must engage in aggressive self-marketing.
See, there is a massive hurdle there for a lot of tech professionals, especially developers.
Oh, absolutely.
The entire culture of agile development is built around the team. Daily stand-ups are always, we shipped this, we fixed the pipeline, we refactored the database.
Yes. Developers are trained to prioritize psychological safety and team cohesion by using we. It is excellent for team morale, but it's fatal in an interview.
Because they're not hiring the team?
Right. The interviewer isn't hiring your previous team, they're hiring you. If you rely on we, you dilute your individual impact to the point of invisibility.
So how does Alex tell Mark to fix this?
Alex tells Mark point blank that to get his foot in the door at a global tech giant, he must stop reciting his job description and start telling stories about his specific individual achievements.
Ditching the we for the I.
Exactly. Saying, we maintain the servers just tells HR what you were paid to do. Saying, I redesigned the failover protocol, reducing downtime by 40%, tells them what you actually achieved.
And to structure those achievements, the sources introduced the absolute gold standard of behavioral interviewing.
The STAR method.
Right. STAR method: situation, task, action, result.
If you are interviewing at a multinational corporation and you are not structuring your answers using the STAR framework, you are operating at a severe disadvantage.
Are they really that strict about it?
Yes. Global companies rely heavily on this specific architecture.
But why are they so obsessed with it? I mean, is it just a corporate buzzword trend, or is there a functional reason HR demands this specific format?
It solves a massive logistical problem for global hiring. When a company like, say, EPAM or Google is interviewing candidates in Warsaw, London, and Bangalore, they have to navigate a minefield of different cultural communication styles.
Right, because like you said earlier, some cultures are going to boast and some are going to be incredibly humble.
Exactly. The STAR method strips away the subjective cultural layers. It provides a standardized, objective metric to evaluate competence.
Ah, so everybody is judged on the same scale.
Yes. It forces the candidate to lay out the raw mechanics of their problem-solving ability in a sequence that anyone, anywhere in the world can accurately score.
Okay, let's contextualize this so it really sticks. The STAR method is essentially the narrative arc of a blockbuster heist movie.
I love this analogy. Go ahead.
Okay, so the situation is the opening scene where you establish the stakes, right?
Right.
The bank vault is impenetrable. The security system is flawless.
Right.
Then the task is the objective. We need to bypass the biometric scanners and get the diamond.
Okay, then the action.
The action is the adrenaline-pumping second act. I hacked the mainframe, I rerouted the power grid, I dodged the lasers.
Yes, it maps perfectly to the cognitive journey you want the interviewer to take.
But here is the fatal mistake candidates make when they fail to self-market. If you just list your daily duties, or if you focus entirely on the action part of the framework.
The laser dodging.
Right, the laser dodging. It is the equivalent of the movie cutting to black right as you reach the vault door. You did all this amazing hacking, but did you actually get the diamond?
And that leaves the interviewer with an unresolved cognitive loop. They are psychologically waiting for the payoff.
The cliffhanger ending nobody wants.
Exactly. If you don't provide the R, the result, they are left frustrated and unsatisfied. HR professionals are explicitly trained to listen for that resolution.
So the action doesn't matter without the result.
Not to them. You can describe the most elegant code you've ever written in the action phase, but without the result, There is no proof that your code actually solved the business problem.
It's the only proof that your actions mattered outside of a vacuum.
Which brings us to a specific verb that acts as the ultimate currency in corporate culture. And that verb is deliver.
Deliver. It sounds so, I don't know, transactional, like delivering a package.
It does, but in business, it is the ultimate measure of worth. Companies do not reward effort, They reward execution.
Right, they don't give points for trying.
Exactly. To deliver means to fulfill a promise, to navigate unforeseen obstacles, and to finalize a tangible outcome.
So when an interviewer asks a behavioral question,
They are not looking for someone who tries hard. They are aggressively screening for someone who can point to a historical track record of delivering concrete results.
that reframes Mark's entire objective in the coaching session.
It completely shifts his focus.
His goal isn't just to prove he has a proficient vocabulary in English. His core objective is to conquer the biological terror of the freeze-up, strategically buy himself the cognitive space to think, and then deploy the STAR method to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that he is a professional who delivers.
Yes. He transforms himself from a risky, unknown variable who might crack under pressure into a highly desirable, proven asset.
That's a massive shift.
It is. If you can command the room with a strategic pause, elevate the dialogue, and land your narrative on a hard, quantifiable result well, then the language barrier becomes secondary to your undeniable competence.
Wow. We have completely dismantled the mechanics of the interview room today.
We really broke it down.
Yeah. For anyone listening who has ever felt that wave of panic before the camera turns on, we've traced the biological roots of the freeze-up and found the tactical override.
We examine how cultural conditioning makes us fear silence and how we can flip that script.
Just by utilizing a phrase as simple as, "That's a stellar question."
Right. It gives your prefrontal cortex the oxygen it needs while simultaneously establishing yourself as a peer in the room.
And we mapped out how to channel that hard-won focus into the STAR framework.
Yeah.
No more hiding behind the collective we. It is about stepping into the spotlight, laying out the stakes, detailing your specific actions, and closing that cognitive loop for the interviewer by delivering a definitive result. You fix the transmission on that sports car so that all your technical horsepower actually hits the pavement.
The transformation from passive candidate to active peer is profound. But, think about the bigger picture here for a second.
Okay, what's the bigger picture?
Well, we have spent this entire deep dive analyzing how Western corporate culture places a massive premium on structured, self-marketed, result-oriented narratives.
Right? Because it proves authority and competence.
It cuts through the noise and immediately establishes value. So if this framework is the ultimate tool for proving your worth to strangers, why do we immediately abandon it the moment we are hired?
Oh, that's an interesting point.
Think about your everyday professional communication, the daily stand-ups, the casual emails, the one-on-one meetings. How much of our routine communication is missing the mark because we revert to passive, unstructured lists of duties?
That is a brilliant challenge. We just get lazy once we have the job.
We do. What would happen if you applied the psychology of the interview room to your daily routine?
Like using STAR in a regular meeting.
Yes. The next time you update your boss on a Tuesday morning, what if you took a strategic pause, focused on the strong I rather than the vague we, and structured your brief update to drive directly toward an actionable result?
That would definitely get their attention.
If you practice buying time, framing your actions, and delivering results when the stakes are low, imagine how utterly unstoppable you become when the pressure is on and the spotlight is finally yours.
Don't just save the sports car for race day, right? Drive it every day.
Exactly.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep refining that stellar delivery, and we will see you next time.